there's a new sheriff in town, not officially till
Yes.
January of next year, but we've got Chris Edgar fresh off the primary election victory and set to be the new Camden County Sheriff. So like everybody else, first I wanted to start with a big heartfelt congratulations, man.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to all the supporters. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, since last Tuesday, I'm sure it's flown by because Tuesday, I'm sure, was an emotional day. And before we get into that, we're going to walk through a little bit about what that was like for, a candidate running and then, finding out you're winning. But I want to talk about your history just briefly, talk about your history in law enforcement and education, because a lot of people I don't think understand all that you've done.
Absolutely. So before I was in law enforcement, I started out in business. My final time in business, I managed 3 large companies. The last company I managed was Price Brothers Equipment. It was a heavy equipment company. We sold major brands of heavy equipment. And the last 2 projects I worked on that I overseen was my equipment built the Kansas City Power and Light District, and we did the remodel on Kauffman Stadium. That time, I told the wife, I came home and I said, I've got the urge to serve, and I think I'm being called to be a servant. I said initially I grew up in a firefighter home. I served as a firefighter for quite a bit, and said I feel like I'm being led to this, and luckily she was very supportive. We left the Kansas City area. We still had our home here at the lake. We moved down here, and I took a heck of a pay cut to start out as a patrol officer.
Wait, so you had a big business in Kansas City that was working on Kauffman Stadium, Power and Light District, lucrative gigs. I mean, so a booming business.
Very, yes.
So this must have been spiritual to feel called or led. This wasn't a money thing for you.
It was a battle because it was going to be a huge financial adjustment. So,
sure.
But my faith means a lot to me, and I feel this is where I've been led, and we've been blessed since. So, and I have 0 regrets of it.
So you were on the patrol, and how's education, come into that? Because I understand that was a big shift and move.
So I went through the regular patrol. I spent 7 years at the city at that time. And then I ended up leaving for the prosecutor's office. It was 3 years at the prosecutor's office, where I was chief of operations, chief of investigations. And then Ferguson, Missouri happened. And there was so much anti-police rhetoric that I thought, I need to make an impact. I don't know how. And at that time, the school called me and said, hey, we have a position teaching law enforcement and crime scene investigations at the Lake Kern Technical Center, and we think you would be a perfect fit. Initially, I was like, no, I love what I'm doing. But my wife talked to me, and she goes, Chris, you've followed your heart, you've stayed faithful. Don't you think you're being talked to?
Yeah.
And I said, I met with a men's group that night, and we talked, and they said, it's time for you to go. So I left the prosecutor's office, and then I went to Lake Kern Technical Center to work with the kids, and it's been rewarding.
I've seen so many comments, like through this campaigning and into the election, it's not always pretty. We see some of the ugly and it gets personal at times, but what I saw an overwhelming amount of was kids who came on and now adults who said, hey, I was really in a bad place, or I struggled, and if it wasn't for Chris Edgar as my instructor, I'm not sure that I'd be here today. And those weren't just a few, those were a lot. So that was something that you really, really put a lot into and was a huge chapter in your life, right?
Oh, it was probably one of the most rewarding things I've done. Just being there for the kids, and I think that ties in with the sheriff's office too. I think it's that servant mentality. It's not about you.
Sure.
It's about you being able to help. And that's always the way I've looked at it. And it was a lot reading those comments. I'm not gonna lie. It meant a lot. And to all the kids that gave that it truly meant a lot. I needed that.
Sure.
Because campaigns are a lot of work. So
a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of time.
Yes.
A lot of emotion. All right, so I want to ask, what made you decide to run for Camden County Sheriff?
I feel it's calling. I do. I feel that that's where I'm being led right now. There's a need in our community. I feel that there's a disconnect with the sheriff's office and the community right now, and that needs to be mended. And I think I can do that. And that's one thing. Whenever I work on something, I pour my heart into it, and I feel it's important to bring us together, and the sheriff's office needs to be working with our community.
Sure. Now, I want to talk about two things. First, after the absentee ballots were in, you were up by 1 vote. So as Tuesday night, let's get to about 7 o'clock, as the results start to roll in and you're sitting there, I'm sure, with your family and your friends, kind of having a watch party. Just walk us through that emotional process that night up until when you found out you had won the primary.
So Amanda and I decided we were just going to stay home. We did a watch party 4 years prior, and it was hard, I think it was meant to be when I lost 4 years prior, because it was very humbling.
Sure.
And so I understand where the other candidates, I understand that point where they're at now. But when the first votes started coming in, that first absentee votes, and I was up by 1, I was nervous. But I said, however it plays out, it's God's will.
Sure.
And I will accept however it goes. And then they started coming in, and the lead started growing, and then I started getting phone calls, and I said, well, it's not over yet. I said, you never know. I had a little bit of a lead, and there was 2 precincts left, and people were calling saying you won. I said, well, let's wait. Let's wait until it's done.
Right. And eventually the win, which I know meant so much. So now the job. Now you touched on this disconnect, this lack of trust maybe between the community and the Camden County Sheriff's Department. So what are some of the things that you think have led to that, or what are some of the things you can identify that right now you think Camden County Sheriff's Department is lacking in?
Communication. Communication is key. You need to be upfront and honest to the people. You know what? If I make a mistake, I'll be the first one to say, hey, you know what? I made a mistake, and here's my plan to fix that. But you can't just, if you make a mistake or if something happens, maybe a deputy does something that they shouldn't have done. You need to be in front of that and being honest with the public, because when you hold off, that seems like you're being dishonest. And then that's when everything goes awry. Yeah. And I won't have that with my administration. We will be upfront and honest, and I want people to be able to trust myself and the sheriff's office. I think that's a huge, important aspect of that. So.
Yeah, and open communication. I know for us on our end, we've always asked for more open communication. Yes. More interviews, more things like that. And so glad to hear about that. So I got to ask, what's your first priority come January 2025 when you take office?
First priority is going to be setting up the advisory board. I've got it kind of like a 100-day layout. I want to get the advisory board set up. And before I go making huge changes, I want to be able to go in and see what's working. I want to be able to hear what the deputies have to say. Ultimately, they know what the problems are.
Yeah.
And the dispatchers and the jailers, they all know more than I do, and more than even the administration up there. So I want to hear from the people on the ground doing the job. And I want to take their ideas and build on them.
I know that you're not announcing your undersheriff yet, which I think is good. As you said, you want to talk to everybody and hear from that. So just because of time, I want to end with one thing I saw, Election Tuesday, your son Austin, post on Facebook. We see the post right here. The post was unbelievable, but the feedback, what'd that mean to Chris Edgar?
It meant the world to me. I was not expecting it, and I can tell you I'm not normally emotional, but that one, it got me. It truly meant a lot, and seeing my son is very important to me. And hearing it from his heart, I had no clue that was going to happen. And seeing that, and that meant the world. And then all the comments coming in, it was a lot to take in. I had to read it in 2 different sections because I couldn't get through it in one.
Well, that is new sheriff-elect, of course, on November 5th. Pat Cochran looks like maybe on the ballot as an independent, but for all intents and purposes, looks like Chris Edgar going to be the new Camden County Sheriff come 25. I want to congratulate you and thank you for your time, and also thank you for the campaign that you ran, the way that you ran it, and the way that you stood back when you could fight back with negativity or nastiness. Because I understand that no candidates called you to concede or congratulate you, but you were prepared to do that. I know
Correct.
you were.
I was.
And I want to thank you for the way you ran this campaign, and I think that Camden County voters certainly got it right. Chris Edgar, appreciate your time, man. God bless you, brother.
Thank you.